My name's Emily. I'm 25 and I live out in a little house near the edge of Ohio with my folks and my kid brother. I've got a steady job at an insurance company. The paycheck's not anything to brag about, but it keeps the lights on, the water running, the internet connected, and covers most of the stuff we need day to day. Honestly, if I hadn't been footing the bills, we would have been freezing last winter when the heater almost gave out. That Christmas Eve, I came home after my shift, still bundled up tight in my heavy coat, with the smell of coffee clinging to my sleeves. The Christmas tree looked like it had been thrown together without much care, covered in old string lights we'd probably dug out from a box in the basement. Same ones we used 3 years back. Mom, Patricia, was setting a plate of ham down on the table, her face tight but trying to seem cheerful. Dad, Frank, was already planted at the head of the table, swirling wine in his glass and staring up at the ceiling light like it held some secret answer he couldn't find. Dinner kicked off in a heavy silence, the only sounds coming from clinking forks and a soft Christmas tune playing on the crackly radio in the kitchen. I scooped some mashed potatoes onto my plate and gave Evan a small smile. Evan's 17 now, almost a man, but still my little brother in my eyes. Out of nowhere, Dad slammed his knife down hard on the table. The bang made me jump out of my skin. "Emily," he said, his eyes locked right onto mine. "You're a burden and you can't stay here anymore." For a second, I thought I heard him wrong. I sat there frozen while Mom let out this weird, dry laugh, like she wanted it to be a joke but knew it wasn't. Dad's stare told me everything I needed to know. He meant it. The whole room felt like it turned to ice. Evan sat there frozen, fork in midair with a piece of chicken on it, staring at me wide-eyed like he couldn't believe his ears. I carefully set my fork down, my hands shaking a little. "What did you just say?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "You heard me," Dad said, voice low and hard. "You've been here long enough. This is my house and I'm telling you it's time to go." I couldn't even open my mouth. It wasn't like I stayed because I had no place else to go. I could have had my own apartment. I could have been living free and clear. I stayed because they needed me. Because Dad lost his job 3 years back and Mom only picked up a part-time gig at the high school library. They couldn't keep the roof over their heads without my help. And here they were on Christmas Eve, treating me like some kind of freeloader. Mom opened her mouth to say something, but Dad cut her off before she could even get a word out. "I've made up my mind, Patricia," he said firmly. Evan's voice cracked when he finally spoke, looking back and forth between them like he didn't even recognize them anymore. "If they can kick her out this easy," he said, "who's next?" I pulled in a deep breath, steadying myself. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to scream. If they didn't want me, fine. I'd leave. But they had better be ready to live with what that meant. I leaned back in my chair, fixing them both with a long, hard look. "All right," I said. Dad gave a smug little smirk, like he'd just won a fight he'd been picking in his head for a while. Mom kept her eyes down on her plate, not saying a word. Maybe she was too stunned. Or maybe she gave up a long time ago. I pushed back my chair and picked up my half-eaten plate, dumping it in the sink without a second glance. I didn't want to spend one more minute at that table. Before I left the kitchen, I caught Evan's eye and gave him a small nod. He was the only one left in that house who mattered to me. Nobody said anything. The sound of forks and knives clinking around the plates kept going, but it felt like no one had the stomach to eat anymore. I went upstairs, closed my bedroom door behind me, and started packing. No tears. No shouting. They wanted me out. So I'd go. But starting tomorrow, that heater was gonna go cold. This whole house was gonna feel cold in more ways than one. The old hinges creaked as I closed the door behind me, sounding more like a final goodbye than anything else. I wasn't thinking about fighting for my place there. They'd made their decision. And now so had I. No big speeches. No long goodbyes. Just action. I dragged my suitcase out from under the bed, opened my closet, and started folding up my clothes. Every shirt I bought, every notebook from overtime hours, every small thing that made this room mine, it all went into that silent, empty suitcase. This room used to be my safe place when the world got too heavy. Tonight, it felt like just another place I wasn't wanted anymore. I was folding my last hoodie when I heard a soft knock at the door. "Emily?" Evan's voice was so quiet I almost didn't catch it. "Did you lock the door?" I crossed the room and opened it. Evan slipped inside, shoulders hunched up like he was trying to guard himself against more than just the winter cold. "You're really leaving?" he asked, his voice cracking a little. His eyes were red, but he didn't cry. Evan never cried, not in front of me anyway. I nodded. "They said it, didn't they?" I said. "And I got no reason to stick around now." Evan sat down on the edge of my bed, looking around the room that already felt too empty. But if you leave, who's gonna pay for the electricity? For the internet, he said, voice rising a little. You know they can't handle it. I stayed quiet for a second. Evan wasn't stupid. He knew. And that's what scared him. I wasn't just his sister. I was the thread barely holding this place together. I know, I said softly. But I can't live my life being nothing but a wallet tie. I deserve to breathe too. I deserve a life that's mine. He stayed quiet for a long time before he whispered something. I want to go with you. Then he froze like he realized what he just said. You can't, I told him gently. You're still in school. You're still a minor. They won't let you leave yet. Then what about you? He blurted out. Where are you gonna go? Who are you gonna stay with? Like if I didn't have every step figured out, it meant I wasn't allowed to walk away at all. I let out a long breath. I'll crash at Kelsey's for a few days, I said. I've got enough saved up to rent a little place. I always had a backup plan, just didn't think I'd need it so soon. Evan kept his head down, fists clenched so tight his knuckles were white. They don't deserve you, he muttered. They don't even realize everything you gave up for them. I sat down beside him, placing a hand on his tense shoulder. That doesn't matter anymore, I told him softly. What matters now is making sure you don't get dragged under too. Just hang in there a little longer, Ty. Once you're old enough, I'll help you get out. He nodded, slow and serious, like he was engraving my words into his heart. You'll still text me, right? He asked, voice small. Every day. I gave him a smile, the kind you give when you're making a promise you intend to keep. As Evan left my room, he glanced back one last time. There was something in his eyes that hit me harder than anything Dad had said that night. It wasn't just sadness, it was that awful moment of realizing your parents aren't really your parents anymore. I finished packing, checking every drawer, every corner, just to make sure I didn't leave anything behind that mattered. By the time I zipped up my suitcase and parked it by the door, the clock was pushing midnight. The house was dead quiet. So quiet, it was like no one had ever lived there at all. I pulled out my phone and started logging into every account I could think of: electricity, internet, water, even the secondary credit card I'd opened up for Mom. One by one, I deleted my banking info. No warnings. No explanations. I had spent 4 years warning them just by showing up and paying the bills. They never listened. Dragging my suitcase down the stairs, I noticed the faint glow of the living room light leaking under the door. But nobody came out to say goodbye. Nobody called my name. No apology. I could even hear the TV playing from behind the closed door, some Christmas special still going like tonight was any other night. I opened the front door without looking back. The freezing air slapped me in the face the second I stepped outside, but I didn't flinch. I didn't feel cold. I just felt free. For the first time in years, I loaded my suitcase into the trunk, climbed behind the wheel, and shut the car door. As my hands gripped the steering wheel, something shifted deep inside me. I was done letting anyone else decide how my life would go. And that bitter Christmas night, that was the start of the life I was meant to have. I drove away from the street that had kept me chained to misery for too long. There wasn't any snow on the ground that night, but inside I felt frozen solid. Not from the cold outside. From waking up to the truth. I used to believe I was helping a family. Now I realized all I was doing was helping them stay comfortable while they drained me dry. I pulled up to Kelsey's place just shy of midnight. She lived in a cozy 2-bedroom apartment only 10 minutes from where we worked. When she opened the door and saw me standing there, suitcase in one hand and dark circles under my eyes, she didn't ask any questions. She just pulled me into a hug so tight, it cracked something open in me. Stay as long as you need, she said simply, and led me inside. Her living room would be my home for the next few weeks. The next morning, with the winter sun crawling over the old brick houses outside, I sat at her little wooden kitchen table, opened my laptop, and got to work. This was my silent revenge. I logged into the utility portal. Sure enough, my name was still listed under every account. One by one, I clicked remove. A pop-up flashed. Are you sure you want to leave this account? After removal, bills will no longer be paid automatically. I hit confirm without hesitation. Electricity, internet, water, even the Amazon Prime account Mom used to stream her nightly shows. I wiped my credit card information from everything. For them, my help had turned into an expectation. Now they'd finally feel what life was like without my silent support. I leaned back in the chair and let out a slow breath. Not because I felt proud, but because for the first time in 4 years I had made a decision for myself. No more unpaid debts disguised as family loyalty. No more carrying people who never thought to carry me back. The next few days were like a pocket of peace. I made it to work on time. I had quiet dinners with Kelsey. I even read books before bed, something I hadn't done in years. Her place was simple, but it was warm. And no one there made me feel guilty for wanting a life of my own. But that peace didn't last. On Wednesday afternoon, while I was filing some reports at the office, my phone started buzzing like crazy. 5 missed calls from Mom. 2 from Dad. 1 text from Evan. The power's been shut off. Dad's freaking out. I didn't reply right away. Not because I didn't care, but because I had cared too damn much for too damn long. An hour later, another message popped up. This time from Mom. Emily, what's going on? The internet's down, the TV won't work, and your father's losing his mind. What did you do? I read it without blinking. They wanted me gone. They didn't get to demand my help now. That night, while Kelsey and I were making a simple dinner, the phone rang again. At first, I didn't want to answer, but something told me to pick up. Emily, I don't know what's happening, Mom's voice trembled through the line. The power's out, the bills aren't paid, we can't even get Netflix to work. Her voice was shaky, full of panic. I kept my voice steady. Who do you think's been paying for all that the last 4 years? I asked. Silence. And then in the smallest voice I'd ever heard from her. You. But your father, Mom started to say. Exactly, I cut her off, sharp and clean. You believed every word Dad said. Now you both get to live with the choices you made. I ended the call without another word. At the time, I thought that was it. I figured once the bills stopped getting paid, they'd buckle down and figure things out. But I didn't realize just how deep Dad's pride and his dependence ran. The next day, an email popped up from the bank. Alert: suspicious login attempt from an unknown device. I logged in right away, heart hammering in my chest. There it was, 3 failed login attempts, followed by a password reset request. And there was only one name that came to mind. Dad. I didn't hesitate. I called Evan. When he answered, his voice was tight and low. Emily. I think Dad's trying to get into your bank account, he said. I saw him flipping through Mom's old notebook, the one where she wrote down all the passwords. I gripped the phone harder. Thanks, Ty, I said. I'll handle it. Hanging up, I sat down at Kelsey's little kitchen table and got to work. I changed every password, banks, emails, streaming accounts, even food delivery apps. Every lock got a new key, a silent message. I wasn't their obedient little girl anymore. When I finished, I sat back, thinking maybe that was the end of it. Maybe they'd finally realize they had to fend for themselves. But deep down, I knew better. My family had never learned how to survive without having someone else to blame. Without me around to absorb the blows, they started tearing each other apart. 3 days after I left, Evan texted while I was on my shift. Internet's gone this morning. Last night, Mom had to cook on the stove, cause the microwave's dead. Dad punched the fuse box this morning. I didn't text back. Instead, I put my phone face down and breathed deep. The house was crumbling without me, just like I knew it would. And this? This was only the beginning. That night, as I left the office, my phone lit up with 6 missed calls from Mom. By the 7th, I finally answered. Her voice hit me like a tidal wave, raw, hoarse, sobbing and furious all at once. Emily, what have you done? She cried. The house is dark, there's no TV, no hot water. Your father's going crazy. I stayed calm, my voice steady. I only turned off what I was paying for, I said. From now on, you can take care of yourselves. Isn't that what you wanted? You can't do this. Mom shrieked. This is your home. I pressed my lips together, holding my temper. No, Mom, I said coldly. It's the place where Dad kicked me out. Remember? I'm just doing what I was told. Silence hung heavy on the line. All I could hear was her breathing, fast and shallow. Finally, she whispered, your dad thinks you're trying to get revenge. I let out a dry, exhausted laugh. No, Mom, I said. I'm just living my life. What bothers you is that I'm not living it for you anymore. I hung up before she could say anything else. I didn't owe them any more explanations. They'd gotten used to my silent sacrifices. Now they were going to have to get used to my silent absence. The next morning, another email alert woke me up. Suspicious login attempt. Possible fraud. Blocked. I didn't need to wonder who it was. The only person desperate enough to pull this kind of thing was Dad. I called Evan right away. He answered in a whisper, sounding scared. Emily, he said. I think he's still digging through Mom's old notebooks. Keeps yelling that he needs to get back what belongs to the family. I closed my eyes, feeling that familiar tight knot in my chest. Did you see him on the computer? I asked. All morning, Evan said. He keeps trying to log into stuff and swearing when it locks him out. I chuckled bitterly. Good, I said. That means the security alerts are working. Evan's voice dropped even lower. Emily, he's saying weird stuff. Like, that girl thinks she's one. I'll make her regret it. A chill ran down my spine. I tightened my grip on the phone. Listen, Evan, I said firmly. If anything strange happens, you lock the doors and call me. Immediately. Got it. Got it, he said quickly. I'll keep my phone with me all night. After we hung up, I went back to my bank accounts and tightened the walls even higher. New passwords 14 characters long, loaded with special symbols. Fingerprint ID required for everything. No more cracks for him to crawl through. That night, sleep barely came. A gnawing dread sat in my chest, heavy and cold. Somehow I knew this wasn't the end. And sure enough, I was right. The next morning, just as I was leaving the living room, I heard Kelsey's voice, tight with worry. Emily, she said, rushing over. Someone's banging on the door. My heart shot into my throat. I ran to the front hall, hair still wet from my shower, and saw her standing there tense. Who is it? I asked, already feeling my hands shake. Not sure, she said. But he's pounding hard. I crept up to the peephole and peered through. And my stomach dropped. It was my father. He was standing there, fists hammering the door, eyes wild and bloodshot. Emily, open up, he bellowed. You think you can just walk away from us? Kelsey looked at me, panicked. Are you calling the cops? She whispered. I nodded, already punching in 9/11. As the call connected, I stood there staring at the furious shadow pounding against the door. And all I could think was, you shoved me out of your house. You don't get to force your way back into my life now. I pressed the phone tighter against my ear, steadying myself as Dad's fists kept slamming against the wood and his voice kept roaring through the hallway. Emily, you think you're so righteous? Dad shouted from the hallway. You think just walking away solves anything? Kelsey stood frozen behind me, clutching the key to the door so tight her knuckles turned white. I gave her a small nod, trying to reassure her, then turned my focus back to the phone. Yes, he's my father, I said to the dispatcher, keeping my voice steady. But right now he's threatening me. And he's trying to force his way into my friend's apartment. The dispatcher stayed calm, her voice firm. Officers are on their way. Stay inside. Do not open the door. They'll be there in about 3 minutes. I hung up, heart pounding in my chest, but my hands stayed steady on the lock. Through the peephole, I watched Dad pacing up and down the hallway, yelling, muttering to himself, hammering his fists against the door. Ungrateful, he barked. After everything I did for you. Kelsey whispered from behind me, voice trembling, this has gone way too far. I nodded without taking my eyes off the door. I know, I said quietly. But he needs to learn. He doesn't have power over me anymore. A few seconds later, sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Red and blue lights flickered across the walls and stairwell windows. I heard heavy boots pounding up the stairs. There was a knock at the door, this one soft and measured. Police! Open up! Stay calm, a voice called out. I cracked the door open and stepped back quickly. 2 officers entered, moving calmly but firmly. They turned their attention to Dad immediately. Sir, one said, you're disturbing the peace and causing a public scene. We need you to leave immediately. Dad's face flushed deep red. She's my daughter, he barked. I have the right to talk to her. The officer didn't raise his voice. He just stayed steady. Not like this, sir. She called us because she felt threatened. If you don't leave right now, we'll have to act according to the law. Dad's whole body shook with rage. I'm not going anywhere, he roared and lunged forward like he was going to shove past them to get to me. I stepped back instinctively, heart hammering. The officers moved fast, grabbing him by both arms and holding him back. Sir, maintain your distance, one of them said firmly. Dad struggled against them, shouting, she owes me. She has no right to treat me like this. I'm her father. I have rights. That line, I have rights, rang in my head like a final nail in the coffin. For years he had used that exact phrase to control me, to twist every situation his way. But not anymore. Today, I wasn't a scared 17-year-old girl shrinking in my chair at the dinner table. Today, I stood tall. I owe you nothing, I said clearly, my voice steady as I locked eyes with him. You pushed me out. Now you have to live with it. The officers guided him to turn around. The cold clink of handcuffs echoed in the hall. And for the first time in my life, I saw Dad not as a towering force but as a desperate man losing control. You'll regret this, Emily, he spat as they led him away. You'll pay for betraying your family. I didn't say a word. I just watched, silent and unmoving, as his angry shouts echoed down the hallway. When the door finally closed behind the officers, Kelsey stepped closer. Are you okay? She asked, her voice gentle. I nodded, even though my throat was tight and it felt like breathing took extra effort. I'm okay, I managed. I never thought it would actually come to this. Kelsey put a comforting hand on my shoulder. You did what you had to do, she said. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away from the people who hurt you most. I sank down onto the couch, my hands still shaking. My phone buzzed. A text from Evan. Dad got arrested? I quickly typed back, yeah. But don't worry. Just stay put. If anything happens, call me right away. I didn't know what tomorrow would look like, if Dad would get released fast or if he'd come storming back somehow. But this time I was ready. I wasn't the quiet, obedient Emily they once controlled. I thought maybe, just maybe, things would finally calm down after that. I was wrong. 3 days later, a text popped up from Evan that made my stomach twist. Sis, your car's parked outside our house. My heart skipped a beat. I called him immediately. Evan, are you sure? I asked, trying to keep my voice even. My car's still parked at Kelsey's. I know, he said. But this morning I swear it's sitting outside our place. The window's a little down. There's even a coffee bag inside, the brand Mom always uses. I felt the blood drain from my face. My car was never supposed to be there. Especially not when I'd taken every personal thing out of it. There was only one possibility. Mom had taken it. I quickly called Kelsey to double-check the spare key. Still safe, untouched, sitting in her kitchen drawer. That meant somewhere along the line they'd made a secret copy. I gritted my teeth. The same mother who had begged me for help was now stealing from me. Without wasting another second, I grabbed Kelsey's car keys and drove straight back to my old neighborhood. As I turned onto the street, there it was, my dark blue sedan, parked quietly right outside their house. But quiet didn't mean innocent. I pulled over, got out, and walked up to it. The door handle was dusty. Inside, I spotted a water bottle, a pair of unfamiliar shoes tossed onto the floor, and a grocery receipt wedged under the seat. It was dated 2 days ago, and it had my mother's name printed right at the top. I clenched my fists, breathing deep to stay calm. I called Evan. You home? I asked. Yeah, he said. You're here. Outside, I said. Where's Mom? Inside, he answered. She just got back from the store. I nodded even though he couldn't see me. I'm coming in, I said, setting my jaw. Stay upstairs, I texted Evan. And don't get involved. Okay. Then I rang the doorbell. The door swung open a few seconds later, and there she was, my mother, standing stiffly in the frame, her hair tied back and a small black purse clutched in her hands. Her face tightened the second she saw me. Emily, she said coldly. Why are you here? I looked her dead in the eye. You took my car, didn't you? She gave a little scoff, stepping aside to let me in. It was just sitting there, she said, waving it off. You weren't using it. I just borrowed it for a little while. Borrowed? I let out a humorless laugh. You've been driving it for a week, I said sharply. Whose money were you buying gas with? And why's the driver's seat reclined like somebody's been sleeping in it? She turned away without answering, setting her purse down on the kitchen table. I stepped deeper into the house, my eyes scanning the living room. Something felt wrong, emptier somehow. Then it hit me. My laptop, I said, my voice rising. Where's my laptop? She froze for a second before answering, her voice even. I sold it. No guilt. No apology. Just cold finality. For money. I asked, though deep down I already knew the answer. I needed to buy medicine for your father, she said. And the house needs so many things. You don't live here anymore, Emily. Anything you left behind. It's just leftovers. I stood there, heart pounding, anger rising up in my chest like a wave. Slowly, I pulled my phone from my pocket. Then you'll have to deal with the consequences, I said quietly. I'm calling the police. Her face twisted in panic. I'm your mother. You can't do this to me, she cried. I stayed calm, steady as a stone. Then why was it so easy for you to steal my car and sell my things? I asked. I forgave you once. This is the second time. And it's the last. I dialed 911. When the police arrived, I laid everything out. I showed them the grocery receipt left in my car. Pulled up GPS tracking logs showing all the places my car had been around the city. I told them clear as day. I wanted my property back. I wanted to press charges for theft. First, Mom tried to argue, but when they asked her to provide proof of ownership for the car or the laptop, she had nothing. An officer turned to me. "We'll instruct her to gather anything that belongs to you," he said. "If you wish, you can file a formal theft report at the station." I looked over at my mother. She wasn't shouting anymore. She looked pale. Her hands were trembling. "Emily," she whispered, "what are you doing to your mother?" I answered her softly but firmly. "I'm doing what you should have taught me," I said. "Protecting what's mine." I turned and walked out without looking back. 3 days later, a text from an unknown number popped up on my phone. "You think you've won? You'll regret betraying your family." I stared at the message. Short, ugly, threatening. No name, no signature. But I didn't need one. I knew exactly who sent it. Dad. My heart hammered in my chest as I logged onto the public jail records site. There it was in bold red letters. Released on bail. He'd been out less than 12 hours when he sent that message. I texted Evan right away. "Dad's out. Do you know who posted his bail?" A few minutes later he called. His voice was so soft I had to press the phone tight to my ear. "It was Uncle Rick," he said. "I heard Dad on the phone yesterday begging people for money. This morning, Rick showed up and gave Mom an envelope." I leaned back, feeling the tension pull tight through my whole body. Rick. The same Rick who used to throw drunken parties that got half the neighborhood calling the cops. If Rick bailed Dad out, this wasn't just a favor. It was an alliance. And that meant worse was coming. Evan kept talking, voice even quieter. "Last night Dad said." He hesitated. He said, "She thinks she's won. I'll make sure she knows what it feels like to get pushed out." The words chilled me to the bone. "He's planning something," Evan whispered. I jumped up from the couch, heading for the kitchen where Kelsey was cooking dinner. She took one look at my face and went pale. "What's wrong?" she asked quickly. "My dad's out," I said. "And he just sent a threat." Her face hardened instantly. "Emily," she said, her voice urgent, "you can't stay here anymore. If he knows this address." I nodded, feeling a sick weight drop into my stomach. "I know," I said. "Someone like him wouldn't accept losing." He'd already gotten himself arrested once pounding on this apartment door. Now he had nothing left to lose. "You have to leave," Kelsey said. "Tonight." I swallowed hard, clutching my phone. Part of me wanted to fight it, to cling to the little piece I'd found here. But my mind was crystal clear. If I stayed, something worse would happen. I nodded. "Give me a few hours," I said. "I'll pack." Kelsey hugged me tight. That night I called Amber, a coworker who had once offered me a room when she found out I didn't have a permanent place to stay. Back then I'd turned her down. I didn't want to be a burden. But now? I didn't have that luxury. When I called her, Amber didn't even hesitate. "Bring your stuff," she said warmly. "You don't even have to explain. Just come." I packed quickly, throwing essentials into a bag. Some clothes, my laptop, my ID, a few important documents. The rest could wait, if I ever got the chance to come back for it. By nightfall, Kelsey and I loaded everything into the car. Before we pulled away, I stood in the driveway for a long moment, double-checking the security system one last time. Cameras, smartphones, everything set. And as we drove off into the night, I realized something. I wasn't just running away. I was running towards something better. Something I should have claimed for myself a long time ago. Freedom.